Good morning. We are holding Hilchos Toen. We're going to address an area regarding the halachas of chazaka. You know, there's a Perek called Cheskes Habatim, and talks about a chazaka of 3 years, which we will address, but not regarding the regular field issue, which we will mention because that's a lot of the issues that we're going to compare and contrast. But we're going to talk about specifically chazaka of 3 years regarding animals and slaves. So let's begin with the Rambam Perek Yud, halacha Aleph, and also halacha Daled. Those are the two Rambams we're going to dealing with focused on, and we're going to compare and contrast some of that with what the Rambam says in the next Perek Yud Aleph. Okay, so the Rambam talks about, let's just get some the Rambam basically talks about the idea of chazaka, meaning when we assume you are the owner of something. So there's something called a very famous statement, chazaka kol ma shetachas yad adam haregel shalom. Something that you are in possession of, we assume it's yours. That's a rule, and therefore there's a rule called hamitzi mechaverei olav harai. The one who wants to take it away from him, he needs to bring proof. So that is a rule. Anything that you can hold on to and put under your, that you can have possession of. So regarding that, there are exceptions to that rule, and as the Rambam will explain here, if something is an mobile item, meaning it moves on its own, behema, chaya, that goes wherever it wants, and grazes wherever it wants. So there, it's not considered yours just because you're holding it, as long as unless since we know it belonged to so and so, and now it's in your possession, that holding on to it doesn't mean anything. And he continues, Ketsa. The claimer or the claimant, whatever it's called, is claiming it's mine. I have proof. No, you gave it to me, you sold it to me. Did not believe. Now here's a very important word. The fact that you have in your hand is no proof. It went on its own. Now, these words are a little strange because he could have just written Sharei Hayechelu. It could have gone. That's because we went. Now, let's go. What happens? Fichach, you don't bring proof, goes back to the original owner. Because you don't have any proof, just holding on to it means nothing. Now, that goes halacha. The halacha Daled. He segues into avodim, slaves. Again, the same rule. You do as you avde. Okay, back to this exactly same halacha. Oh, but here comes a new twist. Hey, vizeh hanit an. Shetafas ha'eved edim sheyesh lazeh ha'eved etzli sholosh shanim ritzufais. That he has this eved in his hand for 3 years, and and he's using him just as the usual way a slave services his master. Since he hasn't made any, he didn't come along, the original owner, and make a protest the fact that he's holding on to his animal, as his habit. I'm sorry, I take it back. I raise an animal. I'm eating the to be other, and it stays in his hand. Now, this is a Gemara and Avchaches in the Mishnah of Cheskas Habatim. It gives a whole list of things. And writes, Avodim. And the land of the list is Avodim. And it ends up that if anything that produces consistently, 3 years. Now, Adaf Lamed Vov Amar Alam and Baba Basra. This is all the Masechtas Baba Basra. The Gemara says, Avodim brings the Mishnah that Avodim have a chazaka of Shalosh Shanim. The Gemara, Avodim have a chazaka? Avodim have chazaka? Meaning mobile objects, basically referring to animals in Goydres. Ein lam chazaka. Amar Rava ein lam chazaka la'alta v'yem chazaka la'achim shalom. Yeah, they don't have chazaka in the regular sense of the fact that you're holding on to them, but if you're there for 3 years, have a chazaka. Okay, so most Rishonim, or many Rishonim, and the simple reading of the Gemara would sound like that. And the Gemara is not only telling us about Avodim that they have a chazaka of 3 years, but that animals also have a chazaka of 3 years. And that's what the Rambam says. And the Rambam says that they have a chazaka of 3 years. Now, I want to just, for a second, digress and show you the extremes in how halacha can go. The Ritva says Avodim needs 3 years, but Gaidris doesn't need 3 years, as long as it's enough of a time that people won't be makbid. That's what he brings in the name of the Rajva. But he says that's not the pshat. The Gemara doesn't sound like the Gemara. Sounds like it puts him in the same line. And in other words, Gaidris and Avodim are the same. So we go from from 3 years to any amount of time to none, as we will see that the Rabbeinu Gershon says by the Mishnah doesn't say behema, it just says avodim. He said, and he makes a difference between a behema gasa or a behema daka, and the Yad Rameh or the Yad Ramah says that only avodim, because you'll write shtaris on avodim, whereas on individual animals you don't write a shtar, and therefore there is no raya, and therefore there's no chazaka. So there either is no chazaka by animals anytime, as long as it's normal that the owner should have protested. 3 years, those are the different opinions. Or, yeah. Now, the Maggid Mishnah correctly, meaning that he doesn't need my excoma, but it's obvious in the Rambam, and he points out what seems to be the obvious, that the Rambam says avodim have chazaka of 3 years. But when it came to the halacha before, when he spoke about behema and chaya, he didn't say a word about it. So why? 3 halachas later, he speaks about avodim, but what about behema and chaya? So he says, obviously not. And he learns like that the Rambam would fit with the way we saw before the Yad Ramah. And And then they bring the Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi says clearly that is masnisen. Listen to this. Avodim kekakoyis. Now, avodim kekakoyis is a Gemara learns out that avodim are hukish lekakoyis. Avodim are compared to land to land, and regarding certain halachas, they are. So the Mishnah there in Kiddush, the Yerushalmi Kiddushin says that sometimes avodim are kekakoyis, sometimes like metaltlin, neither like sometimes like neither, and like where are they like kekakoyis? By our Mishnah Cheskes Abatim, it says avodim. So there are those who want to learn that the Yerushalmi is sort of alluding to that avodim hukish l'kakoyis, and that's what he's trying to say out. In this case, it's avodim hukish l'kakoyis. Now, there are a lot of issues with that, and a lot of people take issue that that's shot in the Yerushalmi, but we're not going to get into that because that's not our discussion so much. But I wanted to just bring out that at the end of the day, the Rambam does not learn, it seems, that by goydros, by animals, there is a chazaka of shalosh shanim, or there's any chazaka, and by avodim there's a chazaka of shalosh shanim. Okay, so let's analyze the Rambam for a moment. In the next Perek, when he talks about Hilchos Cheskes Karkois, he starts off with a blanket statement. All property, meaning real estate, real property, is that's known to a specific owner, they are considered in the owner's possession forever, unless you bring proof that they're not. You know, that's a positive statement. When it comes to Behema and Chaya, he doesn't say it definitely belongs to the first person. He doesn't say we give it back to him. His focus on the negative. Eina b'cheskes shetofsa. Why on the negative? Why not positive? There in Perek Aleph is a lengthy discussion, back and forth. Here, nothing. 3 years, it's yours. There, this focus is always, we throw them out, we give it back. Here's the question, Neman, ain't an Neman. Is he believed and not believed? Why doesn't he use similar expressions? Now, we asked before when he writes, we don't know that. We're just saying that you cannot. It's a possibility, but the Rambam writes it as a fact. Yeah. Again, there are expressions there that he doesn't say here. It's all a question, again, the Ein and Neman as opposed to what we say there. And last but not least, there he writes a condition immediately to the halacha of 3 years. That the halacha of 3 years is only the original owner knew that this guy is there and didn't protest. Here he doesn't say anything about that. It just says if he held it 3 years, it says. Why? Why doesn't he? I mean, this is the first halacha. Here's where you should say right away. Of course, if he could have protested. Why doesn't he do that? Okay. Now, remember, we started off the halacha discussing the idea that there's a concept of kol ma shetachas yad odam areu shalom. In other words, I have it, it's mine. So what I would like to suggest, there's a major difference between agoidres and avodim and karka. Total different, even though it's under the same guise of 3 years by avodim, but it's a different story. By avodim, he starts off telling us that the karka, we see the karka belonging to the original owner. He is the mukzik. You want to become mukzik? You have a whole process of becoming. By avodim, the guy who's holding it is the mukzik. You're a mukzik. The only reason you're not a mukzik is because we see it as if we know it walked into Yerusha. That's why the Rambam doesn't say maybe it walked. It's like we have to see it as if. Halachically, we have to assume it walked in order you shouldn't be a mukzik. That in order for you not to be a mukzik, we have to see it that way. And therefore, he doesn't write it because you could, as because it did. Not that we know it did, but that's the halachic view of it. We have to take away we have to take away your muhsk. Oh. Therefore, here it's not about the question is who's the mukzik? How do you become a mukzik? Yeah, you are a mukzik. We got to take you away from being. We don't believe your chazak is not believable. There's no proof in your chazak. Ein nema. That's why he's focused on ein nema. Oh. So since it's built on the concept by avodim that we see it that it walked into Yerusha, we have to see that. No, we have to assume that. If I hold it for 3 years, and as the Rambam uses that this there was no macha, we can't see it. That it's that you didn't. That we cannot see it. That it's that it walked in. We can assume. We can suspect. But you're the music. Now, this is a chiddush. I don't know that it's true. In other words, I don't know that it's true halachically, but the Rambam doesn't say it, so we can assume it. By avodim, there will never be a case that if he's not there for 3 years, the guy can claim I was in China. It doesn't matter. Why? When there's a Muhammad, the halacha is if there's a Muhammad, we assume you didn't make a halacha. It's how we assume. We don't know for sure. But it's enough not to be a taina to him. Why didn't you make a halacha? Here with tainas. There's a muzik. We need to assume it walked in. He's holding it for 3 years. There it goes. You got to prove. The burden of proof now lies on the original owner. Because it's a maitzi mechaveira lavaraya. No, it's not impossible to have heard about it. It's not impossible to have that it should have happened. But I have a good taina, but you can't have a taina against the muzik. You have to have beraya against the muzik. And therefore, he doesn't bring the Tanai that in Efshel of Haylam because we don't know. Okay. Now, I'm not a farmer, and I don't understand farming, and I don't understand owning slaves or property. I do. I own a house, but I don't have the idea of real property, the idea of tarka and so forth. And I don't understand owning animals. But I know that the Rambam, when it comes to karka and when it comes to avodim, finds that there is a kederech, there's a way to use them over 3 years. Comes to karka, kederech shenanin kol odom bo'isa karka. When it comes to avodim, kederech shavodim sham shnosram. So, I said, perhaps by a behema, the reason there's no 3 years because there is no kederech. Everybody has their own way of using animals. And therefore, you can't say kederech on an animal. Now, I don't know what that means. I'm just telling you the words of the Rambam. And perhaps that's why the Rambam holds it's only by That Shalosh Shanim is not by animals, just by Avad. Okay, sehr gesund.